My hair is too long, but I'm too cheap to go get a haircut. I guess I could just part my bangs to the side, but then people would see my forehead,
which no mortals may gaze upon.
Well, I guess there's only one option left. Not too bad, I don't think. What do you think? Right, leave it in the comments. Yay, I can see again. Hello, my name is Ariel, like the font. Except my name is spelled Ariel, and the font is spelled Arial. Anyways, welcome to another episode of Ask Ariel.
Harry's gonna read some comments. Harry's gonna read some comments. Harry's gonna read some comments from strangers on YouTube. Yeah.
As always, I just want to thank everyone who interacts with my videos and leaves me positive comments. I really appreciate it. Also, someone with the Twitter name Iroquois Pliskin is my waifu. Don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but they drew me fan art. Aw, thank you. Here, let's see how this gets. Yay! Thank you. So shortly after the first installment of Ask Ariel, I received this Tumblr ask. Hi Ariel, I've recently just stumbled upon your blog and I love it. Your YouTube videos especially. Anyways, about a month or so ago, I realized I don't really feel cis. It's kind of weird, but since I don't really know, I've kind of just been going with the flow. But it kind of makes me feel less trans or less legit because I'm not thinking about it all the time and I don't have dysphoria. However, I do feel uncomfortable dressing as a girl sometimes when I feel more masculine. Help! And I replied, just because you're not thinking about it all the time and don't experience dysphoria doesn't mean you're not trans. While many trans people do experience dysphoria, having more or less dysphoria doesn't make you more or less trans. I think this is very important to address because while I do think it's very important to recognize dysphoria as a very common struggle many trans people face so we can offer them the care and support they need to overcome their dysphoria, we should recognize that transgender individuals all have unique experiences. I think in particular defining the transgender experience as something that's inherently negative, as something that inherently brings one pain, that's just a very pessimistic conception of what it means to be trans. And it fosters this mentality where some trans people, or particularly people who are questioning their gender identity, they feel like if they come out as trans, they feel like they're somehow lying or that they're undermining the struggles of other trans people. And so I think it's important to reiterate, if you're a person who's trans and you don't experience dysphoria or you experience significantly less dysphoria than other trans people, that doesn't make you less trans. It just means you have a transgender experience that falls outside the typical narrative. Also, another thing is, I think particularly, a lot of times if you've lived for a long time with dysphoria, you might have dysphoria and just don't recognize it because it's so normal for you to be experiencing that dysphoria. While having a label to explain your gender identity can be helpful and empowering, it's okay for you to feel uncertain about what terms you want to use to describe your gender, especially when you're only just beginning to discover your gender identity. If you feel the need to give some kind of explanation about what your gender is, especially if some people mislabel you as cisgender, you can always say you are questioning your gender identity. Also, if one label feels right for you now, like gender fluid, agender, non-binary, etc., it's fine if you try using it to describe yourself and then you later switch to another term. When I started seriously questioning my gender identity, there were times I felt fairly confident I was a trans woman. It's often confusing at first when you question your gender, and you should not feel guilty for having doubts about your identity. Often feelings of not being trans enough come from the fact that from a young age, most of us have been taught to conform to society's expectations based on our assigned gender. And this becomes so ingrained in our minds that we become convinced that we must be cisgender. Also, even if one questions their gender identity for a while, but eventually comes to the conclusion that they are really cisgender, or maybe a gender nonconforming cisgender person, they don't have to feel ashamed about it. Gender is confusing for a lot of people, not just trans people. On a video I made called Bisexual and Pansexual Erasure, Ozark Earthship Farms wrote the following comment. I'm really glad you mentioned that bit toward the end about people delegitimizing female sexuality. I've never heard anyone say it that way, and I felt that has been going on for so many years. So in the video on bisexual and pansexual erasure I made, I mentioned the phenomenon of people delegitimizing female sexuality as something that in particular affects bisexual and pansexual women and women-aligned people, because I've noticed that often when women come out as bisexual or pansexual, people assume that it's just a phase or that they're just experimenting. But I think it relates to a larger phenomenon of people failing to recognize female agency, particularly when it relates to sexuality, but also in all other aspects of life. We can see this in a lot of Hollywood movies and television shows where often writers do not give their female characters agency, particularly in romantic contexts, and instead these characters merely serve as a love interest for male protagonists to pursue. Or even in movies and television shows with female protagonists, particularly romantic comedies that often star a career-driven woman whose ultimate happiness comes not from the professional goals she has chosen to prioritize, but instead from a romantic relationship with a man. This kind of media propagates the idea that women are less likely to know what they want in life than men, which I believe has an overwhelmingly negative effect on how society treats women. If women can't be trusted to know what they really want, then others, particularly men, will be less likely to take them seriously when they express their needs, their desires, and their grievances. So a few weeks ago, I posted a video about trying to practice self-care, and a lot of people posted encouraging comments with helpful advice. Persephone Basilissa writes, Ariel, as a person with decades of experience in trying to practice self-care and become more productive at the same time, I'm going to share the most important thing I've learned. No one can do it all at the same time. One way to take some of the pressure off is to prioritize, not just day to day, but year to year. Every January or so, I decide that this will be the year that I don't worry about reading books, but will read articles instead. Or that I won't worry about editing videos, but will edit photos instead. Or that I won't worry about making scrapbooks, but will clean out the garage instead. The most important things to work on every day are the adulting tasks. Do the basic responsibilities at the basic level and judge yourself kindly. Everything else will come in time. I think that's really good advice, and I'm definitely trying to learn how to prioritize what things I'm going to work on, what things I'm going to pursue at any given time. But, it's hard because, it's accepting my limitations, accepting that I can't get everything I want to get done. But it's definitely necessary because the way things have been going, I've just been getting none of what I want to get done because I'm just so overwhelmed with, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. But when I allow myself to get really overwhelmed with everything, then I just get nothing done. And that's no good at all. So yeah, I'm definitely, it's hard, but I'm definitely working on it. So thanks for the advice. Quirius Earthling, love the name by the way, says, there's always time, maybe not now or tomorrow, but eventually to learn and grow and experiment and accomplish whatever you set your mind to. Figuring out yourself and figuring out the world takes time and effort, and many people live their entire lives having never figured out either. And it's okay to not figure things out, but never give up and never stop asking questions, because eventually you will see all of the dots start to connect. Maybe one dot at a time, one step at a time, and you will begin to see the bigger picture take form. But it's not the destination that matters, it's the journey. Because personal growth is not a straight line. And maybe it's not even a line at all. Maybe it's more of a dotted line. I like that metaphor. I think I am starting to become a little bit more at peace with not having everything figured out and still figuring things out. And I think a lot of people are in that position right now, and there's sometimes a pressure to act like you know everything, or act like everything is clear to you, or you have all the answers. But I think it's good if we can start to all admit, like, sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. And sometimes I need other people to educate me. I think that it would be, the world maybe would be a better place if there were more people who were open to admitting their shortcomings in terms of their knowledge and figuring things out. So anyways, thank you. Now, a commenter named Lance Edwards has posted a lot of really supportive and thought-provoking comments on my videos, and I really appreciate the ideas and advice Lance has to offer. On my most recent video titled, "I'm Going to Prove Them Wrong, Performing Happiness," Lance left the following comment. "Your openness, caring, and desire to help countless others as they travel their paths is clearly part of who you are at your very core. This is what makes you real. This is what makes you a builder, not a destroyer. A teacher, not a propagandist. A healer, not a hater. Continue as you are. Find joy in your accomplishments, but more importantly, understand that accomplishments are not an end, but merely another step on your life's journey. No more or less important than your perceived failures. Every experience informs if you let it. Avoid the cynical temptations. I have traveled that path too often. It always leads to dead ends. Be who you feel yourself to be, and you will never disappoint yourself. Use your talents and chosen mediums for good. Live a true and honest with yourself life. Do not let the artifice of culture rule you, and you will live a genuine life. Culture is manufactured and always changes. Take care, Ariel. Peace, health, happiness, and a long life. You are a good person." Aw, thank you. I don't know, as a creative person, I definitely struggle to find that right balance between pretension and cynicism. Because, I certainly don't want to be creating work that's like just cynical and thinking like, oh, whatever, my work doesn't matter, doesn't have an impact on anything. Who cares? Just put something out there. Don't care about what the impact is. I do care about the impact, whatever I'm putting out there. If I'm putting out a song, or if I'm telling a story, or if I'm doing one of these videos, I do really care about the effect it has on others, and I'd like to have a positive impact on the world, or at least on some people in the world. And it's something I do think about, and something I sometimes even worry about, just in general. But and it's nice to get comments like this, but at the same time, I don't know, it's a tricky balance, because also I think sometimes when I become a little too pretentious with whatever I'm doing, whether it's some sort of artistic endeavor or something on my YouTube channel, I don't know, it's just not even good for me. And also it's, I don't know, hubris is, I don't think it's good for anybody. And I think as a creative person, sometimes there is a certain kind of narcissism that I can fall prey to, where I will either be like, oh yes, I have this thing inside me that I need to share for the world, and it's going to make everything great, which is a little delusional, and I try to keep tempered. But then the problem is it can also swing in the other direction, where I'll be like, I'm nothing, I can't do anything, and I'm just powerless. And I can definitely fall prey to the cynicism too. But I'm trying to find that healthy balance, and it is nice though to know that at least Lance thinks I'm doing something right. Finally, the last segment of the previous episode of Ask Ariel, I chose to title "The Joker, John Travolta, and a Mormon," and apparently someone saw that I included the word Mormon in the title. Then they chose to clearly not watch any of the video and just use the fact that I included the word Mormon in the title as an invitation to try to proselytize me into their faith, which is not Mormonism, by the way. So first of all, they encouraged me to learn Hebrew, which, I mean, if I had the time and the mental capacity, I would love to learn Hebrew and all sorts of other languages. But, I mean, considering the fact that I had like 6 years of Spanish in high school and middle school, and a few in elementary school before they chose to cut Spanish from my elementary school, and I still barely know any Spanish, I don't think I'm going to be learning any Hebrew anytime soon. So basically, the main point of this commenter, whose username is a servant of God of heaven, is that all the books in the Christian Bible, Old and New Testament, they're totes for real. But the Mormon texts, they're not totes for real. They're totally fake, according to a servant of God of heaven. And they conclude their comment by asserting, "The Lost Bible has nothing containing the doctrines you have in your church. What exactly did Joseph Smith restored? None!" I don't really have anything to say in response to this comment. Just think it's funny that they assumed I was Mormon just because I included the word Mormon in the title of my video. And then they chose to act on that assumption that I was Mormon by telling me that all the sacred texts and the prophet I would presumably have faith in if I was a Mormon are all a bunch of malarkey, and that I should not be a Mormon anymore, and I should learn Hebrew and read the Christian Bible in its original Hebrew. So, thanks for the advice, I guess. Thanks for watching. I always appreciate comments, so if you have a question, an opinion, or anything else you'd like me to respond to, just post it in the comments of this video or any of my other videos, or send me your questions or comments on Twitter, or submit them to my Tumblr Ask page, and maybe I'll include them in a future episode of Ask Ariel. Bye!
Ariel's gonna read some comments. Ariel's gonna read some comments. Ariel's gonna read some comments from strangers on YouTube. Yeah.